Welcome to That's So Clutch, an automotive podcast that bridges the gap between car industry experts and those who are not. Hello everyone, welcome back to That's So Clutch. I'm Alini Ferreira, your host, and today I have Billy Perkins here with us. He is currently a shop foreman at First Texas Honda and a Honda certified master technician. Thank you so much for coming in, Billy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Billy, you've been with Honda for 11 and a half years now, which is crazy. You know quite a bit about cars, I assume.
I would say so,
Hope
yes.
so.
Yeah, I would hope so, yes.
You're married and a father of four who you love to travel internationally with, which is awesome. So, I just want to get straight into it. What got you into automotive?
Previously, before I worked at Honda, I worked retail.
Okay.
I worked for HEB for a number of years, which is a great company to work for. I have nothing bad to say about them. It was a great experience. The specific position that I had, I was happy with, but when I would get home and I would ask myself, hey, in 5 years, am I still going to be happy and enjoying the things that I'm doing right now? The short answer to that was no. And so when I looked at what is it that I enjoy doing, oftentimes, you know, in the evenings or on my days off, I would spend some of that time with friends, either talking about cars, looking at cars, or working on cars, which I had absolutely no business doing back then. I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah.
One day I saw an ad. I was watching TV and I saw an ad for a trade school for automotive. And I just decided to pick up the phone and gave them a call to see what this is about. I scheduled an orientation to go over there. Before I went there, I called my dad to get his opinion on it. My dad comes from a history of, he's a tradesman also for a number of years. And even to this day, he's an HVAC technician, a refrigeration technician. So when I called him and I asked him, hey, I'm thinking about, you know, joining a trade and being an automotive technician, what do you think? He immediately said yes. And so that kind of put the wind in my sails. I went to school. I graduated. Whenever I finished, there were two brands I wanted to work with, either Honda or Subaru. Honda called me first, and that's where I've been ever since.
That's awesome. So you actually didn't come from a world of cars prior to that, right?
No, not necessarily. When I was growing up, I think up until maybe towards the end of high school, you know, I was a boy. I liked cars, but I wouldn't say I really got into them until I started hanging out with a group of friends. One of those friends is Cody Penna, who is here at Infinity.
That's cool.
And the more I hung out with him and his friends, the more I realized, you know, I really like this.
Yeah. So what's your role day to day as a foreman?
My primary focus every day as a foreman is to teach, to train, and share my knowledge and the skills that I've learned over the years with technicians. In addition to that, also educate our customers, educate our advisors, and all of our staff on vehicle systems, how vehicles operate, and ultimately how, you know, what is wrong with this person's vehicle and what it's going to take or what it took to get that vehicle back on the road.
What is the difference between a foreman and a technician?
So a foreman is more of a supervisory type role.
Okay.
As it relates to a technician. Yeah. So I oversee 45 technicians.
Oh, wow.
And I also work laterally with about 15 service advisors, and we see, you know, hundreds of customers a day.
That's
so it's a big operation.
So it's kind of like the team is diagnosing a car, not just one single person type of thing?
When a vehicle comes in on the service drive, you're greeted by your service advisor. What your service advisor does is they're kind of that liaison between you, the customer who brought your car in, and the technician that's actually working on the car. So that advisor, the first person that you meet, they're going to figure out why you're here.
Yeah.
What's wrong with your vehicle. They're going to gather as much information as they can.
Yeah.
And then they're going to write it on a repair order. They're going to send it into the shop. The technician is going to get that repair order. They're going to see, okay, this customer is in for this vehicle makes noise at this speed. That technician is going to diagnose and figure out what that car needs. They're going to relay all that information to the advisor. Advisor is going to pick up the phone, call you, the customer, and tell you, hey, this is what's wrong with your vehicle. Either it's going to take this to fix it, it's covered under warranty, or it's going to cost this much to fix it.
Okay. So moving on just a little bit, what's one car skill that you think everyone should know?
I think everybody should know how to check their oil,
Okay.
especially as your vehicle ages.
Yeah. That seems to be a common trend with all technicians. They're like, this is must have.
Right. And the reason for that is when your car is brand new, there isn't necessarily a reason to check the oil. But as your car ages and the longer you own it, whether that's time or that's mileage, it's very important for you to know how much oil is actually in your car.
Yeah.
On most vehicles, to my knowledge, there isn't any technology on that vehicle that tells you how much oil there actually is in the vehicle. So it really relies on you, the owner of the vehicle, to open that hood and pull that dipstick out and see how much oil is. So,
Yeah.
for example, on a Honda vehicle, whenever you're due for an oil change, we have this system called Maintenance Minder, and it starts at 100%. And as you drive, it goes down in increments of 5. So it starts at 100, goes down, 95, 90, and it keeps going down from there until eventually lands on about 15%. A light comes on, tells you, hey, you're due for a service. But all that percentage, that maintenance minder it's more of like a expiration date on your oil and its life.
Yeah.
And it's not an indication as to how much oil is in the car. So when you see 100%, that means your oil, 100% of it is usable. Not I'm 100% full, just 100% of it's usable. The way that I like to explain it to people is if you buy a gallon of milk and you check the expiration date on there, it's good for a couple weeks. That maintenance minder is kind of the same thing. It's just like an expiration date on your oil.
Okay. So how do people know when to get their oil changed depending on their vehicle?
It's going to vary vastly on the vehicle that you own. Modern day vehicles there's some sort of maintenance system, some sort of algorithm there that's going to tell you when you're due for an oil change. So on our vehicles, it depends on, there's a lot of different things it looks at. It's not only looking at mileage, which historically that is all cars have looked at, but it's looking at mileage. It's looking at how long your average commute is as far as time goes. It's looking at the temperature outside. It's looking at the temperature of the engine. It's also looking at how long you're idling for, and it's taking all of those things into consideration and kind of tailoring a maintenance plan for you. So the best advice is, when do you change your oil, would be when the car tells you to. But remember that that's not an indication as to how much oil is in it. So as your car ages, it's very important to check your oil level.
Okay. So what do you think causes the most drama between technicians in the shop?
The first answer is pretty childish. What I've seen and what I've experienced is, as a technician, for some reason, drama can start when somebody's making more hours than you, right? Hours meaning the work that they're doing and how much they're getting paid.
Yeah.
What I found with technicians is anytime maybe work slows down a little bit, or you're having a frustrating day for whatever reason, they start looking around and they figure out, hey, this guy next to me has this many hours where I only have this many. What I've seen technicians, they start to create these scenarios in their head where, you know what, that technician must be doing something that's either inappropriate, or wherever they're getting work from, it's not being dispatched and divvied out fairly. I've been on the receiving end of that, where technicians have looked at me, come to me and said, hey, or accused me of making hours, right? And my response to that has always been, there's never been a time in my career where I haven't had that many hours and I've looked at someone else and said it's their fault where I'm not making hours. So long as there's plenty of work to go around, I've always kind of stood in my lane. And in the event that somebody is making more hours than me, there should be a different conversation. And that should be, well, what are they doing differently than I am? Right. And so what I would do in that situation is go to that technician that's making, a significantly more hours than I am, and say, hey, what are you doing differently than I am? And just kind of create that conversation.
And a positive outlook rather than a negative one.
Right.
Yeah.
The second thing that I've seen would be between the technician and the advisor, which a lot of times it's just the advisor did not get accurate information or enough information for the technician to to really look into that vehicle,
Yeah.
it just results in wasted time. And as
Yeah.
a technician, time is money.
So, what's the craziest thing that's happened at work in your 11 and a half years working as a technician?
One of the craziest things that I've seen being a technician is I pulled a car in for just a routine service, an oil change and a tire rotation. I lifted the vehicle up, and on this particular car, underneath it, in order to change the oil, there's a cover underneath the vehicle that I have to take off. So I went and I took that cover off, and as soon as I took that cover off, I saw a pair of eyes looking at me. And the longer I looked, I saw a second pair of eyes looking at me. And I backed up a little bit. I thought I was seeing things. And when I took my flashlight out of my pocket and shined it in that area of where I saw those eyes, there were 3 live kittens in this engine bay on top of this cover that I just took off.
And they made it all the way
They
to
drove
the
in.
service
They
shop?
drove in like that, right?
Was it cold?
It was summer.
Oh, I guess the heat.
I guess
maybe,
they were
right?
looking for some shade or
Yeah.
something. This customer, obviously, I
Oh my
assume wasn't
gosh.
aware of that. I don't know where they drove from, but they drove in, and those kittens made it all the way over there
You're
to
probably
First Texas
so
Honda.
scared. Oh.
Yeah, we got them out, and then a couple people that I work with ended up taking them home. I don't know if they still have them, but
Well, that's
it's probably
sweet.
one of the crazier things that I've seen. Yeah,
What a good positive way for that story to go.
yeah.
So, how often does a car come in and it leaves unfixed or misdiagnosed, and then the customer has to come back?
It happens often, especially in instances where whatever the symptom is intermittent, or it doesn't happen all the time. In my experience, I've over the years I've kind of specialized in those intermittent issues, and a lot of times it comes down to a customer will come in and they'll describe a symptom for it. The car is doing this. But not everybody has that technical background, and when you're talking about a vehicle, sometimes it can be like another language, right?
Right.
And so it's hard for some people to put what's happening into words. And a lot of times they'll come in, and I believe everybody that comes in and says, "Hey, my car is doing this." I believe everybody that comes in.
Right.
But we always have to have a conversation sometimes where, okay, yes, your car is doing this. I believe you. However, in my possession, it's not doing it. And so we have to come up with a game plan with that customer. And sometimes it takes more than one visit for me to resolve their issue. Because a lot of times what happens is they'll come in and they'll have kind of a vague description. And when I can, I like to get in the car with them and go and drive and be like, show me what the car is doing. And sometimes that doesn't always happen. So I like to get in the car with these customers, because if it doesn't happen for them, then it's easier to explain that it didn't happen for me either.
Right.
So a lot of times they'll leave, and now they're already pretty observant of whatever the symptom was at the beginning or on their first visit. And a lot of times they'll leave, and they'll be a little bit frustrated, and I'll be frustrated too because I couldn't fix their car.
Right.
They will be even more observant than they were first times around it. And a lot of times that customer will be able to establish a pattern for me on their next visit. So they'll come in and they'll ask for me again. Right. And they'll say, "Hey, when I do this, the car does this." Or it happens if, my car has to sit for several hours before this symptom happens. Or I have to drive my car for 20 minutes. Or it happens, when I'm making a left turn and going over a speed bump, or when it's cold outside. So a lot of times that second visit, I make a lot more progress because we've established that pattern.
Yeah. So in your opinion, what's a service job that it's the most fun to complete?
To me, I would say a timing belt. The reason
What is that?
So the timing belt is your engine has basically 2 main components to it. There's the top of it, which is called the head, and then there's the bottom of it, which is called the block. Within both of those components, to extremely oversimplify it, there are gears at the end, and they spin, and they have to spin in unison in perfect timing in order for the engine to run properly. That's why it's called a timing belt. So to me, it's always fun to take all of these covers and all of these items off the front to access that belt. Remove that belt, put it on, and make sure all of these gears, all of these cams and sprockets are in perfect time. Put everything back together, start the engine, and the engine runs again. And so
Like
to me,
a
that's
puzzle
always
piece?
like a puzzle piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's always fun.
So in your opinion, how has online resources or DIY videos, car repair videos changed the automotive industry?
There's a lot of information out there now
Yeah.
on the internet, and some of it is very good information, and some of it is very easy to misinterpret.
Mm.
There are lots of customers that come in and have kind of pre-diagnosed their vehicle. And sometimes they're correct. In all
Yeah.
fairness, sometimes they're correct.
Mhm.
And when they are correct, I'll agree with them in that initial conversation. But I always want to make sure that, I always want to do my due diligence and make sure that it indeed, when I have this vehicle in my possession, that the conclusion that they came to is the correct conclusion. So I always want to do my due diligence and make sure that that's right.
Mm-hmm.
But for every good piece of information that's out there, there's also just incorrect information. And
Yeah.
so a lot of times it's difficult to overcome that customer or that person that comes in that has pre-diagnosed their car
Mm-hmm.
and tell them, hey, that could happen if your car had this, system on it, or your car was this year model.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that conversation, because they've gone on the internet, sometimes it's kind of hard to overcome that.
Yeah.
Because in all fairness, dealerships kind of have this stigma of not wanting to do things under warranty
Mm-hmm.
or wanting to upsell services
Right.
in repairs to you.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can totally understand when somebody comes in, hey, I saw this online and all I want is this, and you're immediately faced with, well, let me verify that, or that I don't think that applies to your vehicle, or that doesn't apply to your vehicle. So sometimes it makes it easy for me, where the customer it makes the conversation easier because they've done a little bit of research, and they've educated themselves a little bit. But sometimes it makes it harder because not only do I have to prove what's wrong with the car, but I kind of have to prove why the information that they got on the internet is also incorrect.
Yeah.
As a technician with Honda, I have a lot of resources that I have access to.
Yeah.
I will say, if you are a Honda technician, there's this secret Facebook group.
Okay.
It's probably not a secret if I'm saying it now, but there's all of these
Well, you
technicians.
can keep it a secret.
Yeah,
if you
you have to be a technician to be a part of this group. But all it really is a bunch of Honda technicians that have come together and said, hey, I have this car with this problem. Has anybody seen it? Or it's, hey, I had this car with this unique problem. I'm just letting you guys know.
Oh, that's
so it's
cool.
It's such a good resource out there. But if you are not a Honda technician, I don't think they're going to let you into that group, because you have to kind of somewhat prove that you're a Honda technician.
Well, that's cool. Well, so with everything changing and online resources being more accessible to people, do you think that your job as a technician is kind of at stake with like AI coming about and robots, all these random things?
I don't think so. No, because I don't think that AI has the ability to overcome human error. And what I mean by that is there's so many scenarios that I can think of in diagnosing a vehicle where I've gone through the entire troubleshooting procedure and I still don't have a repair result. I don't see how AI would be able to overcome that element there, right?
Yeah.
Let's say it does, right? Let's say technology advances so far. Somebody's going to have to fix that equipment that fixes the cars, right, is what I think about. So with my technical ability and my mechanical ability, I think it'll always be in need somewhere, and I think I'll always have something to do.
So there seems to be a common opinion that Japanese manufactured cars like Honda or Toyota are more reliable and last longer than American manufactured cars. What do you think about that? Is that true?
The Japanese are known for their meticulous attention to detail in everything that they do, whether that be product design or manufacturing or quality control. They're known for that. And not only that, but I think that they have always set out to be reliable companies that make great products out there. In Japan, there's this concept called Kaizen, which means it translates to continuous improvement or change for the better.
Okay.
And so what it really emphasizes is always making small incremental changes to improve both professionally and in your personal life. And so what that results in my opinion, is high quality products made by people with a strong work ethic. So I'll give you an example. At Honda's R&D centers and at their factory, everyone there wears these all-white uniforms, which get dirty very easily, right? They stain very easily. They get smudges on them. But the reason why they wear that is because Honda has this philosophy that great products come from a clean environment. And so if you're going to wear all white, you have no choice but to work in a neat and organized and clean space.
Right.
And in my opinion, that is the most kind of productive space that you can work in.
Yeah.
And so when you have that culture, I think by default, you're going to have better products coming out of that company. So let's compare that to, American vehicles. I'm not going to speak on the cultural differences as far as work ethic goes between Americans and the Japanese. But what I will say is that historically, American vehicles have prioritized performance and power over longevity and reliability.
Right.
And because of that, reliability has suffered. I think it's fair to say that they've made improvements on certain models, right? But that perception still exists that, when I compare this vehicle to a Japanese-made vehicle, it's a no-brainer, right? I question the reliability of this Ford or this GM vehicle, and I don't really question the reliability of this Japanese-made vehicle, this Honda, because it's always been reliable. And so we've done a good job, I think, of maintaining that perception.
Yeah. So currently, Honda does not have any fully electric vehicles. Why do you think that they are taking their time on creating EVs?
So going back on what I said about their Honda's quest and the Japanese quest of always being reliable, there's kind of two parts, right? Honda's always set out to make reliable vehicles at a price that majority of people can afford. EV production and EV vehicles and the components that make them are still very expensive. That R&D is very expensive. That technology is very expensive.
Yeah.
And so I don't think, it's my opinion that they don't mesh yet, right? So Honda's reliability versus being a fairly priced product, I don't think that those are in line with each other yet.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's why you're not seeing that yet. Now, we do have one scheduled for 2024. It's called the Honda Prologue.
Oh.
And that's going to be our first all-electric vehicle. And that's actually a partnership with GM. I believe that vehicle is essentially a Chevrolet Blazer EV, I think.
But it's going to be a Honda?
It's going to be a Honda. So basically, GM gave them this vehicle or gave them that technology, gave them the blueprint. And Honda took it, and really the only thing that they changed is the way that the inside and the outside looks. So they partnered with GM. And so I think they're recognizing that, okay, our customers want this. So maybe let's look into some manufacturers. Let's work together to have something that's maybe been proven so that our customers don't lose that reliability. And also in Japanese culture, there is a strong emphasis on collaboration. And so it's not surprising to see them come together with another manufacturer.
So this is going to be my last question. It doesn't have to be automotive related, but it can be. If you could tell your younger self one thing, what would it be?
I would tell myself that there are great things that lie ahead of you, that there are going to be hurdles in your life that you're going to have to overcome both at work and outside of work, but you have a strong support system behind you. Even if you don't have it yet, you will. And I would tell myself that time is more valuable than money, that you can always make more money, but you can't make more time.
That's perfectly well said. Thank you so much for coming in, Billy. This was awesome. I really enjoyed learning about the Honda EV that's coming out right now.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining. I hope you had fun. I really did.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right, everyone. Thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed this episode of That's So Clutch. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to leave them down below, and maybe we'll feature them in the next video. Bye.